Subtracting whole numbers, blood pressure. Clyde recently had a systolic reading of 156 while at the doctor's office a couple weeks ago. Now that he's been on his new medication and exercising every day, he has returned to the doctor's office to see if these changes have improved his systolic reading. At the doctor, his new systolic reading is 135. The doctor can see that the blood pressure has dropped. However, in order to determine how much it has dropped, he would need to find the difference between the two numbers. To find the difference between two numbers, we need to subtract. To subtract, we line up the place values and work from right to left. This is the same process that we use when adding whole numbers. Therefore, looking at the example of Clyde, we would start by lining up the starting number, 156, and then write 135 directly below it. Now we can subtract. So we start on the right-hand side. 6 minus 5 is 1. 5 minus 3 is 2. 1 minus 1 is 0. And so when writing our final answer, we don't need to include the 0 because it is on the far left of the rest of the numbers. So the answer is 21. Now let's look at another example. Example 2. We have two numbers, 6,038, and we're going to subtract 3,519 from this. So let's go ahead and write this out. Now that we have the numbers lined up, with the ones over the ones, tens over the tens, the hundreds over the hundreds, and thousands over thousands, we can now start subtracting. But as you can see, 8 minus 9, this is not possible, so we will need to borrow. When you borrow, you're going to go to the next highest place and lower it by one number, carrying this 1 back to the place that you needed to borrow for. Therefore, we borrow from the 3, we make that a 2, and then we take a whole 1 and we make 8 becoming 18. So now we have 18 minus 9, which is 9. Now 2 minus 1 is 1. 0 minus 5 is also not possible. So we are going to have to borrow again to the next highest level. So that is the 6. We make this a 5 as we're borrowing a whole 1,000 and then putting it in the hundreds place. So now we have 10 in the hundreds place. So 10 minus 5 is 5. 5 minus 3 is 2. And so now we have our final answer, 2,519. And so when subtracting whole numbers, always remember that we are going to line up the place values and work from right to left. Now that we've covered the basics about subtracting whole numbers, let's apply what we have discussed back to our blood pressure scenarios. Example 3. Darius' job has become more stressful over the last couple of years. His most recent blood pressure reading told him that his systolic reading has elevated at 128. How many points would he need to reduce this number in order to get into his normal range and have a systolic reading of 118? So, using what we know about subtracting, we need to line up the numbers with 128 on top. And then we're going to put 118 directly below it, making sure we line up the place values. Now that we have done this, we can start subtracting. We're going to start working from the right-hand side and working ourselves to the left. So 8 minus 8 is 0. 2 minus 1 is 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. And so since that 0 is on the far end of, again on the left-hand side, we don't really need to include it. Therefore, our answer is 10. Darius would need to reduce his systolic blood pressure by 10 in order to achieve his more normal blood pressure reading.